You ask feedback from your Thai team members, they nod, smile, say yes, but nothing changes. You've tried being friendly, you've tried being direct, but the barrier remains. You know they have more to offer, but you're unable to unlock it. In this conversation with Ben Horgan, who has spent 25 years in Thailand, speaks Thai, and has navigated one of the biggest leadership challenges, bridging the gap between expat leaders and Thai team members. In the conversation, we discuss three big mistakes that expat leaders make, which kills trust. And we share strategies on how to get honest feedback in a saving face culture. And at the end, Ben shares something he heard from one of his Thai team members, which I believe every expat leader wants to hear. So stay tuned to the end. Let's get to the conversation. Continue from there, Ben. I mean, when you were saying that you came in at an early age and that really helps you, would you like to continue that story?
Yeah, certainly, Girish. So, when I first came to Thailand, I was 19. I was a student. I was studying business in the UK, and a year later, I graduated. My plan to travel the world, as a lot of British kids did in those days, took a gap year, travel the world. It was always the plan to come back to Thailand because I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I did move on. I got as far as Australia. I worked there for a few months, 6 months. But then the plan was just let's come back to Thailand. It just happened very quickly. I always tell people I've only been to Thailand twice in my life. The first time was a holiday, and the second time was a holiday too. But I never went home. So my first couple of the first couple of years I was living on an island down south. I did some work in the, let's say, the leisure and tourism industry and whatever, but moved to Bangkok when I was still like 23, 24, and that's when I did my teacher training, and that's when I started work. So when you asked me earlier about culture shock, my brain tries to think of what were those first impactful memories I had, and mostly it's not much to do with work, I would say. I remember the smells and the traffic and all of these normal things, but the decision for me to stay here and work was quite positive, but I was pretty young. So I'd done my training. I was a new teacher. I was teaching in corporate classes very early, but I was an employee, and I was happy with that. So I didn't have any huge culture shock because I was expecting to be managed. I wasn't expecting to make leadership decisions or anything like that. So it was small things for me to start with. What I've seen a lot is, in many times my leadership positions have been where I've been helpful to the business owners is, I've worked for a lot of foreign owned businesses in Thailand and Thai businesses as well, but I'm often the in between between the Thais and the foreign staff, or the foreign owners and the Thai staff, and things like that. So I think I see the cultural butting of heads from other people more than myself. As I've got more experienced, and as I've had more important roles, some of obviously these tensions arise because I'm managing people. So I certainly have feelings of what is challenging as a leader with multicultural teams. But when I genuinely think about culture shocks in business, what's interesting is I actually think of not Thais. I think of Americans, Germans. And I think because I was so accepting of Thailand and Thai culture, and I was studying the language when at those times as well, I was hugely interested in that. But I think I wasn't expecting any culture shock between Americans, Germans, and other Westerners here in Thailand. But that certainly was a surprise to me when I started hiring teachers and corporate trainers. I found myself trying to hire British guys that were like me and had the same background as me. And when I started working with Americans, Canadians, whatever, and they didn't react in the ways I was expecting, that's when I think I started to notice the culture. It's more of a self-reflection first, understanding more about my culture from seeing the differences. And then the Thai culture was more interest than study. But I was really, really open to it to start with. So the tensions didn't come until I had much more senior roles, I would say.
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's
Yeah.
like when you say the tension just come when you become into like in a more senior role. Can you be more specific? It's like what kind of tension did you say?
As a teacher, largely you're left alone when you're doing your job. So I was still allowed freedom and autonomy, to do what I wanted and be successful. So what I see as challenges, obviously, once you start getting into management,
Mm,
then you're trying to get Thai people to follow instructions, make decisions, work at a certain pace. And I think that's where it becomes a lot more challenging because my expectations and theirs
mm.
aren't as aligned. My expectations were ready, when I was a teacher. So,
I was reading this. I'm reading this book called Team Emotional Intelligence by Vanessa Drescott. And just today, I
mm,
was reading a section on how important optimism is in the team. And she
mm,
talked about the research study where their mental model, if you have an optimistic mental framework, it really influences the way you interact with the community, with your place, how it makes you more open to things, you're more resilient. And I know I feel that because that's how I experienced Thailand in my early days. I was very open, I was happy, that was my focus, and I was absorbing things.
I very much agree with that. And there's this ongoing joke in the expat community, right, about the bitter old falang, right? When
Yeah.
when do you find yourself as you get older, not necessarily turning into that, but maybe understanding it a bit more,
Mm,
like understanding the frustrations more. We talked the other day, Grish, about burnout
yeah.
and bad experiences with employers. Without going into too much detail
Mm,
there, I've experienced that more recently,
mm,
and it's dangerous because it can give you quite a negative view of Thai people as a whole, of the education system or the way Thais do business.
mm,
But I have to remind myself that I've worked with lots of Thais that I enjoyed working with, and we were very successful together.
mm,
But I can see that if you don't have this positive attitude, or if you're experiencing a negative experience quite early on,
mm.
it would be very easy to fall in that trap, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it's only going to work only Thailand. Anywhere
Of
else,
course, of
if
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
in that mindset or in that intention, it's going to be bad if you don't have
Mm.
positive thinking
Yeah.
about the place that you are in. And of course, it's not going
And
to.
obviously I work for Net Expat. When we do this and we're inducting the new expatriates into Thai culture,
Mm,
we go into a little bit of the patterns that you see over the expat assignment.
mm,
This feeling of positivity can go
mm,
up and down, right? But it's actually not the same even for the expat and their partners. They
mm,
sort of go up and down at different touch points,
mm,
and mostly when you look at an expatriate assignment, what, 3 years, five
mm,
years, certainly of all the people I've known in Thailand over the last 25 years, most of them are gone, right? Most people don't stay
mm,
that long to
mm,
either grow to love the place or to get tired of it.
mm.
Yeah, I certainly am still pretty optimistic about Thailand as a whole, and it's my skill set now as well. It's what
Yeah.
I it's
Yeah.
what I can do. So move me somewhere else, I'd have to start again, I guess. So it's very much a mindset, and it can change very quickly. It can really damage your psychological well-being, but it's quite easy to remain positive in Thailand. I think if you're thriving, I the workshop I did yesterday about engagement, if you look at the Gallup survey, right? So they look at thriving at work and thriving in your life, and they look at it like, well, if you're thriving at work, you'll probably be thriving in life because you spend more time at work. But I think the opposite can be true in Thailand. If you're thriving in your social life, if you're happy to be in Thailand, then you'll be happy to go to work for a few hours as well. But that's probably easier for like lower skilled, more
Mm.
relaxed jobs. Running a business, your focus is very different.
Think I'll go back to that challenging part. Um,
Hmm.
I could resonate that during my initial years of working in Thailand. I was working in the context of training as well, training
Mm.
aspirant cabin crew members.
Mm.
I come from a culture back home, India, where we valued persistence. We
Yes.
valued purpose, that we have a goal we need to achieve, no matter what. Even if you're driving in the road, the bridge collapses, you try to find a way around to move to reach where you have to go. Now, bringing that mental framework to Thailand and working and expecting that, as you were talking about expectations, I think I reached a point where I became more pessimistic. I was hitting my head against the wall, expecting something from the students, which I had in my brain. I had to really work hard, and I think a lot of conversation had to happen between me and her for me to understand, to reach the people where they are instead of asking them to come to where I am. Yeah.
That I think a lot of people have that experience. I've coached a lot of expats and a lot of Japanese expats actually, and a recurring comment from a lot of them. I remember coaching a guy on like delegating to Thai people, and communication in general, and he said, as a Japanese guy coming here, at first it was quite easy. Thai people are kind of similar. They're polite, they're respectful, and so are we. So, the conversation, there was no conflict like you might get with a French guy coming in and a British guy. But then when he delegated and set deadlines, as you can imagine, right? The Japanese deadlines are very tight, and the Thais not so much. And, misunderstanding, miscommunication. The guy hasn't delegated as effectively as he thinks he has. But then he said, he also had to, and a lot of them said this, I also had to adjust my expectations on deadlines. And in the end, he said, like you said, we could have also realized that perhaps our strict deadlines aren't actually that necessary. So yes, the Thai people have a slower pace or a different attitude to work, but maybe the Japanese one isn't necessary either. So at least he was able to meet in the middle. But I think it's a genuine frustration. Thailand, I'm not saying there are no businesses with cultures that, have that speed. But as a general rule, I think most Thai people would agree with this. They have a much maybe healthier attitude to work-life balance. Their expectations of work are sort of, turn up, be told what to do and get it done. This kind of results-only attitude, if you really push it too hard, it's not healthy for the workplace if nobody wants to work like that. And it doesn't mean the business can't be successful just because it's a bit slower than another business. We see a lot with, the Western attitude is, fail quickly and keep going, but sometimes they fail and that's the end of it, right? And if the Thai company's still there, if it's succeeding after 30 years, who's to say they're wrong?
True. I think it's
Well,
a lot depends on the value and how we've been, like we grow up in this kind of cultures and the environments that kind of teaching us indirectly that what to value more and what to concentrate or focus the time on, or what is not so important. The priority might be different when we grow up.
Sure.
So
Yeah, of course. But even so, that doesn't mean to say all foreign businesses are successful and the Thai ones will fail. That's just not true either. So it is a different value. And if you strongly have that value in place and you rigidly want everyone else to stick to it, you'll probably be disappointed. But again, you have to remember that value doesn't always equal success.
totally agree. I think it's like then you just need to understand the different type of value systems, like where you grew up and how Thai people think about things and then the prioritizations. I think
Exactly.
mostly,
Yeah, right.
and most people would say that we Thai, we try to like avoid confrontations, or we don't like to talk anything that's so negative or conflict and so on and so forth. But I feel like if we just adjusting the way of communication to align, then it's just a matter of able to articulate your thought in certain way that can match what the Thai people comfortable to talk about.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, there's certainly a type of Thai employee that avoids conflict too much, I think. I definitely don't think all Thai people in business avoid conflict. Of course not. Once Thai people are good leaders, they embrace what is the international standard, how you communicate. I'm thinking of my wife now, and this was a meme I saw the other day. Actually, it was completely unrelated to culture, but it was something along the lines of, it turns out my wife did agree with everything I said. She just didn't like my tone. And I think that's a lot of it. The way you speak, the way people can feel disrespected and shocked, and they just don't want to talk to you any further. That doesn't mean that they can't get through that problem if you spoke about it in the right way. And Thai people do solve problems with each other, and you don't see it even happening sometimes. Right.
I think I told you we are conducting this survey where we are asking expat leaders to share their thoughts on working in the Thai context, leading in the Thai context. And from the survey, what has come out as some of the top two challenges that they have identified when working with Thai teams. Number one is able to encourage members to be more creative, share some innovative ideas. And the second one is getting honest feedback from them. Does that resonate with you? Is that how you have experienced Thai teams?
That thing about creativity, I don't agree that Thais are in any way generally less creative if they are that type of person, or if they're doing that type of role or have that education. But one thing I see a lot of foreigners fail at is, if you're starting a small business, everybody does everything, right? You have to be, multifaceted. You have to try new things. I have had a lot of challenges, especially with younger Thai people, trying to get them to do anything outside of what they've been trained in or what they're used to. So crossing over, from different roles is a challenge, and expecting someone to just pick up a new skill. For a short period of time, some friends of some sort of connections of mine asked me to come and help them out at their tutoring company. It was only there for a short time, but it was kind of a consultancy thing. I was the general manager there, but it was only for like a year, kind of thing. They wanted some advice and they wanted some help. In the end, I told them, you don't need a general manager, right? You should do this yourself, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, in the meantime, I was, trying to manage these Thai teachers and trainers that they had, and they were pretty well, most of these tutors, whatever they were training in, they'd come from the top schools, top of their class, and that's how they became tutors and whatever. And so they were good, they were good at what they did. But when I said to them, look, would you like to learn this new course? Would you like to cross over and have these, so there's a couple of skills and a couple of things you could do. Huge lack of interest. And they were even saying things like, but how could I teach that? I don't have a degree in it. That kind of comment comes out a lot, which you would never hear in the UK, I don't think. But yeah, I found it very hard trying to say, how about you, we can spend some time training you, I'll teach you this thing, and then you can do that now. No, just very little interest at all. But if you hire a creative, I think they're pretty good. I've worked with some amazing graphic designers and stuff like that. And I certainly wouldn't say they are less creative than their Western counterparts. The other one you said was
getting
feedback.
Honest feedback from their team.
And I mean, saying no first and setting boundaries, but also very importantly, just speaking candidly, full stop. You've heard of the book Radical Candor? Kim Smith, I think, is her name.
No, I haven't. No.
Very simple, very effective kind of concept of, we learn in the West this kind of American style Wolf of Wall Street, or even just the original Wall Street from the 80s, right? This kind of being tough attitude as being good at business, being strong, and that's quite old fashioned now. It's kind of quite a patriarchal kind of a thing as well. So we learn about empathy, but empathy minus the candor is just hugely unhelpful, right? You have to have the candor, but you have to care at the same time. And where those 2 points cross, you have this radical candor idea. But on the opposite, you have ruinous empathy, where everyone in the organization is empathetic and doesn't want to upset anybody else. But what they are actually doing sometimes without realizing it is being passive aggressive or actually damaging somebody else's career because it puts them in a bad place. And then of course none of it's intentional, but arguably this Thai style of communication is good for maintaining Thai business cultures, but it's not so good for intercultural cultures or getting things done quickly, being agile and things like that. So I do think it's something Thai people need to learn. You could start a business in India, China, and Thailand, and everyone's competing, and whoever wins, wins. And there's with technology, there's a winner, right? And everybody else just dies instantly. So I think for that, Thai people perhaps have to step up a bit. And I see this with tech students, right? They're learning agile methodology, but I don't think they're very agile in the way they communicate. But, as expats, when we're here, I still feel it's our job to assimilate. Okay. But when you're doing international business, nobody cares about that. So I do think Thais need to speak more candidly. But yeah, like you said, saying no, setting boundaries. Years ago, when I started doing cultural training and I did some research, that was always one of the top things. Learning how to say no.
So then, my follow-up question would be: what can leaders do in order to build that culture where people feel psychologically safe to open up and share feedback?
Yeah, and actually, that's exactly what this book, Radical Candor, does. And the answer is quite simple. You ask for feedback yourself. You start with the community. This is what I think. I mean, just with communication in general, a lot of leaders wait until there's a problem, like kind of float around the place until there's a problem and try and fix it. But if the problem was trust and communication, you've already lost. So I think you've got to build that trust first, ask for feedback. That can be difficult because you don't want to in Thai culture, you wouldn't want to be as the leader in any way like self-deprecating of your skills or lacking in confidence, because that doesn't work very well. But that the feedback, the conversation should be two-way first. Okay. One of the things I learned from some of the Thai cultural books I read in the early days was a lot of expats say retrospectively, you come into Thailand as a leader expecting to be a general. But the leadership in Thailand is perhaps more suitable to be a commander, where you have to sort of come down a little bit and actually lead by the hand, and help people and teach them, share your skills and stuff like that. But another thing that I would add to that, and this is something I've always tried to do, because I've had a lot of management jobs where, I told you I'm always the in-between guy, right? But also that means I'm often hired because there's a problem. And the worst thing to do as a foreigner is to turn up and go, right, I'm going to make some big changes around here. Right? Because first of all, that's not what anybody wants. Right? But the second thing is they all kind of go, yeah, we'll see. And if those changes fail, which they often do, you've lost the trust both ways, right? They don't trust you for taking care of them enough. You're pressuring them to do things they don't want to do, but they also look at you as, well, you just tried that first thing and you failed. So I think it's very important to lead with success. It sounds really obvious, but until they've seen you do your job well for a while, how can you then say, I know what's best for everyone? So I think you have to be successful. So you turn up, you deal with whatever you've got to deal with, but you do some work, you show them that you're helpful. Like I worked with a friend of mine who owns a digital marketing agency, and I was the director of business development there. So I had to manage the sales team that he had. I came in as a salesperson, but with the Thai sales staff underneath me. And there was only a couple of them at the time. Yeah, I didn't tell them what to do. They've been doing it longer than I have, and I didn't think that would work. So I was just very helpful. The sales girl, I helped her. I just joined her meetings. She was making meetings. I said, well, why don't I join you and I'll help you and see if my being there adds some credibility and help you close the sale. And, I prepared the slides for her and this kind of thing. And there was this attitude of, oh, you didn't need to do that. But I think it set the standard for our relationship a lot better. than if I'd have turned up and said, yeah, what you've been doing is all rubbish. Your figures aren't high enough. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's pretty. And just about feedback, this is something I learned from a book, I think. I did not know this earlier, but whenever I used to try to ask feedback from my wife or Thai people, I would get positive feedback on certain aspects, and the other aspects they would completely leave out. And I would ask, like, what about that? But didn't say anything about that. They wouldn't share. It took a while for me to learn that in Asian, especially in Southeast Asian cultures, when they give you feedback, if they have not given you feedback on a certain aspect, just understand that means it's not up to standard. There is something that you need to improve in that matter.
Yeah. If they don't mention something at all, maybe there's a problem with it. Yeah. Yeah, and expecting them to be critical of their boss, even in a subtle way, is hard. So this feedback thing really has to be developed as a skill. I don't think that just comes up through natural conversation. I think it's something you have to address with people. That I want to know the bad feedback. Tell me where it went wrong, and or just bring it up. Well, what about this? Because I think if you say, like, I didn't think it went that well, then they'll probably agree with you. It's like with marketing, right? When you're doing a survey, you have to be very aware of the different attitudes towards rating things. You can't expect, the survey results don't mean the same thing, because they say that, especially Southeast Asian cultures, they tend to go very high on the 10 out of 10, or they'll go very low and give you nothing out of 10. But for that to happen, they'd have to be really annoyed with the quality of something. So they tend, I've seen this at universities here. They have this feedback system where they just ask the students, what did you think of this course? And it's quite a pointless exercise, to be honest, because if they say the teacher was terrible, you'd have probably noticed other ways, before waiting until the end of a program, right? But what they tend to do is just grade very near the top. So it becomes, and years ago when I did the teacher training, we did the same thing. But we would hand out these paper surveys at the end to the students, and after a few months I just stopped doing it, because we didn't get any useful feedback from the students. They were just very, very nice, and if they did have a negative thing to say, so apologetic about it, they would go downstairs, they would talk to the staff and say, yeah, I don't want to complain, and I'm sure he's a great teacher and he was really nice. We just felt this, but it's probably not his fault. It's probably because of something else. So we just stopped doing it after a while, because we knew whether the teacher was doing a good job or not anyway.
So you're saying that make feedback a part of your culture, make it more continuous, make it a habitual thing, not something you do once in a year, once in 6 months, if you really want genuine feedback from the other side as well.
Yeah, and I mean, for just people development in general, it's something I do a lot of if I'm teaching, say, public speaking. I think a huge part of that process is learning how to evaluate yourself, which is challenging. Nobody wants to watch a video of themselves or listen to themselves. That's actually quite an advanced technique, that quite good public speakers, to really hone their skills like an athlete, will maybe watch themselves back. But it's not something most people would do in training. But I think it's very important to get Thai people to evaluate each other. So if I'm teaching public speaking, I will teach how to give feedback as part of that course, and then have them start slowly giving feedback to each other. But by the end of the course, they're actually a bit more used to it, a bit more comfortable with it. And it's a safe space because they're always together in the same class. But by the end of the course, you can't expect their actual skills to have changed that much in that time. But if they're just braver to give the feedback, really instills a growth mindset in them, I think.
It's not part of their education. I haven't seen Thai students being trained on giving feedback to each other. So I really like the idea, and we have seen that with our clients as well. When we give them a framework or a template to work with, they are more comfortable because they're not used to it. When they see it, they're more willing to participate, more willing to share.
But yeah, and I think Thai people are receptive to feedback if you do it well. as much as anybody else. There's, this idea that Germans love getting negative feedback. Of course they don't. They still feel bad about getting negative feedback, but they accept it. And it's that ability to separate work and life. Whereas in Thai they're so intertwined, it's different, but you can do it. It just takes a little time.
Yeah, I think in our work, we believe you need to build that foundation of trust in order to have that feedback or constructive feedback conversation.
Yeah.
Then I really want to ask you about those 3 points you had written, the biggest mistakes. I think you had shared that on one of the LinkedIn post comments as well, where you talked about 3 big mistakes that new expat leaders make.
Yeah, so one of these I've mentioned already, which is expecting the same skill set. Okay. I mean, there's more to it than that, for sure. But, you get a team, you know what role they're in, but then expecting them to function in the same way as that identical team in another country doesn't. Asking them to cross-function, asking them to work with other teams without thinking about that, these aren't as easy to do. I think unclear job roles is one. It's a similar topic, but unclear job roles is one. I was talking to my business partner about this yesterday. Actually, we were reminiscing about where we met, which is where we used to work together, right? And that was a typical case of British business owner hired me. Initially hired me to set up the corporate training department, which I did. But eventually, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? At the end of the day, I was the director of operations for the training company, which was one part of the business, and this language school that we owned, because I was the in-between culturally. When I was talking to my business partner yesterday, we were reminiscing, and we both agreed that this was a really nice place to work. Generally, everybody had most people there were happy to work there, and my boss, I think, made a typical Western mistake, which is overhiring. Now, that's not necessarily a mistake in some companies, right? But that's not a good business model with a small training company, right? To have far too many people working there. So that was one mistake he made. But the other thing that my business partner pointed out as being a particular thing that the Thais didn't like about him was he kept trying to get people to do different things. And one person might look at that as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to learn new skills. But for the most part, that is not how that was perceived. It was perceived as, you don't know what you're doing. There's no structure here. It's all over the place. You keep changing your mind. And now you're making me do something that's harder than my old job. And I don't want to do that. You know what? One thing I really can't understate as well, which we haven't talked about, is obviously the language. I can't. I would be insane to pretend that my success has just been because of my amazing business skills. I think the first step is, if you can talk to people, that barrier goes down really quickly. Again, if I mention my business partner, we would joke sometimes. I've got another close friend who used to work with me, and his Thai is also pretty good as well. He was pretty culturally competent. They would say things to me like, when I look at you, I don't think that you're a Falang anymore. Like, I stopped thinking of you as a Falang a long time ago, because they don't, when the boss walks in the room, you can just see the atmosphere change, right? And he's completely unaware of it. But I don't get that, and being able to have lunch with them, and little things like that really, because you've got to develop the trust because of your competence and your management style. But on the friendship side, everyone knows this, but it's not as easy to do as it sounds. You can't just buy people's trust. I've seen a lot of guys do that, and it works for a while. If you just turn up on day one, I've bought everybody coffee. Well, first of all, you can't just spend 1,000 baht a day making people happy. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I think they see through it eventually when the person starts failing in other areas, or if they start failing in other areas.
In fact, that was one of the most startling things we found in our survey, where we asked them, have you ever been trained on intercultural aspects when coming to Thailand. Over 50% of them said no. And
Yeah.
I don't know, does it surprise you?
It's quite big multinationals that spend the money on it. We talked about this at the conference, and I would say the companies that tend to do, or the expats I see with the greatest success, tend to work in companies that already have a very strong culture. And ironically, they are training them on Thai culture, but they maybe need it less than anyone else. And I do get that feedback sometimes. You know, they say, "Oh, this culture is very interesting. I'm glad we learned about this and this, but actually this bit and this bit and this bit, I'm not that worried about, because in my company everybody speaks up because that's the culture of the company." But arguably, you're looking at a very small percentage of the Thai workforce there, right? So I don't think that's a hard and fast rule. Something I did a survey talk for the Australian Chamber of Commerce, and we held it at the school where the corporate training company, the language school where I worked. And before everybody came for this, I thought it'd be good to have some statistics to back up what I was saying. So I just surveyed every Thai member of staff in the company, okay? And I asked them questions about, do you think it's important for foreigners to learn about Thai culture? Foreign managers to learn about Thai culture? Yes. Do you think the foreigners in your company have a good understanding of Thai culture? And that wasn't bad, because there were a couple of us that certainly did. So that was kind of medium. That was okay. The interesting questions were, okay, do you think it's important for foreigners to learn Thai? Actually, a lot of them said no, because I don't think Thai people see Thai language as a language that you would want to invest in. A lot of when I started learning Thai full time, a lot of the Thai educators I work with were asking me, why are you learning Thai? And I said, oh, that's a silly question, isn't it? I'm here, I'm in Thailand, I'm working with Thai people. But they didn't think of it like that. They said, yeah, but you should pay to learn Chinese because that one's worth more money. And I said, well, not for me, it's not. But then we asked them, on the other hand, do you think it's important for Thais to learn English? And they all said yes. Now, we were in a language school. Not everybody that worked in the language school was great at English automatically, but they all saw the benefit of it. When we asked them, do you think you should learn about culture so you can work better with foreigners? Basically, none of them said yes. And I think they have just quite a different outlook as to what culture even means. You know? And something I've always found challenging, if I'm running a cultural workshop and it's mixed, because there's a few ways you can do it. A lot of the time, the cultural training is the expat coming in and it's induction, right? And they're on their own. But if you're running it for a group, first of all, I found it's quite difficult to sell, really. If you speak to a Thai HR professional, they will again probably think, well, we would only want cultural training for the expats. And the Net Expat survey kind of reinforces this, right? Sometimes they will accept that, this is something that is affecting the expats and the managers that they work with, and maybe we should do this together. But I have had once or twice, some strong resistance to cultural training from Thai people. And so what I always do now is I start with a very slow, like, what are the definitions of culture? Let's share that. And, you know about the surface culture compared to the values and all of this. But I really think to Thai people, when you say the word Thai culture, they think of those surface things, and they think of it in a very, very positive way. They think of Thai culture as being a positive thing. In fact, if you look in the Thai dictionary for the definition of Thai culture, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says something along the lines of things that people do together for the unity of the country, or something like that. It's really quite loaded with with this attitude that Thai culture is good and that's the only answer. But if that's okay when you're looking at music and food and stuff like that. Why would you be negative about it? That's okay. But you have to then say, yeah, but we're also talking about values and the way that people communicate and work with each other and how it can be different. But I think part of that is because I didn't have much cultural understanding before I came to Thailand. Even as an early expat, the culture shock gives you enough self-awareness to see the difference. If I was in London and someone said, we're going to have some cultural training because we've got 3 Chinese guys working with us next week, I'd probably think, what do I need?
Yeah.
So I think that's important. But yeah, it's a challenge because cultural, as again, the Net Expat survey showed this. If you're going to do cultural training effectively, especially if you elevate that to then creating a strong company culture where you can pick and choose, well, okay, you guys tend to work like this, we tend to work like this, but let's just agree what we're going to do here, that works the best. But how can you do that unless everybody has had that conversation? I had a very successful case with this once. I was asked to do some cultural training at an Indian manufacturing plant. Again, I was very quick to have this conversation with the HR team because they wanted 2 sessions, one for senior management and one for sort of middle management. And I said, well, is this just the Indian expats? Or is it a mixture, or are we separating and having one for the Thais and one for the Indians? But they wanted to do it by level more. And they said, well, in that case, for the senior one, yeah, it will be mixed. I said, okay. So I had to be careful. But also what was interesting, when I got to this company, before we started the training, I sat down with the HR person again, and I think the GM or whoever it was. And when I said, so look, what's the real reason that you felt the need to do this? Whose idea was it? It turns out that it wasn't just a cultural problem, it was a communication problem, because the reason they felt that the training was necessary was very specifically because some of the Indian expats were doing things that were in the Thais' eyes culturally inappropriate. But of course, they weren't telling them about it. So they were hoping that by me coming here, I was just going to give the Indians a long list of things that they're not supposed to do. And I was like, I can't do that. That's not going to be an effective way to do it. So again, I started very slow. Definitions of culture, this is a safe space. We're talking about generalizations, of course. It's not everybody. It's not human nature. It's not their personality. And of course, there are beautiful things in all cultures, but it's about our values and how we interact with each other. And then what I did is, just for a fun activity, okay, let's look at some do's and don'ts. And I mixed the Thais and the Indians, and I said, okay, first we'll do Thai culture, then we'll do Indian culture, and just share these silly little ideas. The Indian guys were talking about things that are different in India, like when you beep your horn in India, it doesn't mean anything. In Thailand, if you beep your, silly things like that. But it created an atmosphere where people were laughing and sharing information. You also then see all the similarities with, Hinduism and, the history of Thai culture and the history of Indian culture. There's a point in time when most cultures were kind of quite similar in this feudal system. In India, you have the caste system, but it's really not that different on paper to what most countries had, as well. So you see a lot of shared ideas there, but then you can talk about, okay, so when we talk to each other, what goes wrong? But if you start with that, there's a lot of resistance.
The part they talk about learning another culture, learning about the English cultures and all. Yeah. That is actually the first time that I really thinking back, like, if you ask me, I don't want to learn as well. As a thing, like, it's not so important in
do you know what
relationship.
Do you know what I think about that? I think one thing that's a bit different is, of course, what Thais and lots of countries have a lot of pressure from at a young age is to learn English, right? And I think, like a lot of companies here, PTT, for example, the oil company, they have quite a strict rule that to get to a certain level, you have to have studied overseas.
Yes.
And of course, the English level. Let's be honest, you study overseas, let's say you do your master's degree in London. 2 years? Is that enough time to learn and master a culture? I don't think it is. I knew nothing about Thai culture after 2 years. That's when I started learning about Thai culture, to be honest. But I think when a Thai person has gone through all of the effort and all of the years to learn English at a very high level, I think they figure, well, that is the language of international business, so now I'm ready. And I don't think they see the culture in it Whereas Thai is very different. If you learn the Thai language, it's very unlikely that you're not going to understand something about Thai culture. But to learn English means nothing. You could learn English in India, you could learn English in China. It doesn't mean you've picked up any culture.